Happy Wednesday to everybody. I have a great special guest, Tracy Sandler. She is the CEO of Fangirl Sports. You need to check that out. She's a beat writer for the San Francisco 49ers. I've seen her collab with Matt Mayoka from time to time. And if you like to listen to 95.7 The Game, closer more to the evening, sometimes she'll be on there. I have been waiting a while for this one. You've been letting me know that you would have a little bit of time in the middle of September. So we have gotten here. I am really happy to kind of pick your brain about the first week of the season with the win in Pittsburgh and just get your thoughts on it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate you making time. Real quick, for some of the ladies that watch the show, because I have friends of friends, and it's always cool when the ladies get into sports. You know what I mean? Like it's cool to share that. My sisters are not into sports at all, so anytime I could, whether I could chop it up with somebody and they happen to be a lady and they talk about football and they know football, it's always awesome. So I always am encouraged to see what they know and what got them into it. So what was the thought and the process about creating Fangirl Sports?
Well, there are actually 40% or 45% of NFL fans are women, and 30% of NBA or 32% of MLB. I might be mixing those up, but the point is there are a lot of female fans, and I didn't really feel like there was a place with content that spoke directly to women and spoke directly to women in a not condescending way and really let women embrace their fandom however they wanted to do it. So I wanted to create that place. So I created Fangirl Sports Network, and our content is funny, informative. We go off the field. We do a lot of lifestyle. We have merchandise, and then of course, news analysis and all of those things. So it's really a place for female fans and many male. We have many male followers who love the content, but I really wanted to create a place for female sports fans, and that was how it all began.
That's awesome. It's I've checked out the website, and you're right. It's not super like it doesn't scream you must be a woman to be on this website. So I mean, It's got a very inclusive type of vibe.
And definitely everybody check out, for those of you listening, also check out our website, fgsn.com, and then check out our Instagram at Fangirl Sports Network. We do a lot of memes on Instagram and a lot of really fun stuff that I think you guys would enjoy.
Awesome. I wanted to get your vibe. I saw your Twitter, so you were there on Sunday. Overall vibe before I get into asking you about what Purdy looked like, after being out and recovering for the time he was. What was just your overall vibe of the 49ers beating the Pittsburgh Steelers the way they did? A lot of fans, including myself, thought it would be a lot closer game, just based on travel. The Steelers have a lot of talent, and no, I don't think anybody other than some fans who really, I guess, know the 49ers more than me thought that they would, put a 30 burger on them like that and not really have much resistance. What was your overall vibe from the game?
I definitely thought it was going to be a closer game, kind of for some of the same reasons. And, I felt a little bit differently as the week went on. Once they signed Bosa, there was a vibe shift in the building. You could just feel it, and in the locker room. And once that happened, I wasn't sure they were going to win the game, to be honest. Early in the week, I would have picked them to lose. Then as that happened and the week went on, I felt, not just because of what Bosa brings on the field, because obviously he's Nick Bosa, and no matter what the stats say from Sunday, and he had perfectly respectable stats, his presence on the field is just changing, game changing for everybody. So once he signed and he was back, I felt like they were going to win the game, and probably it wouldn't be as close as I originally thought, just because there was a vibe shift. Just having him there, it kind of just changed the energy all the way around. So I thought it would be a closer game. I was surprised by the Steelers' performance, but I really don't think it's a week one overreaction to say that this 49ers team is a very good team, and everything they did on Sunday to me is indicative of how the season is going to go.
Yeah, I was on a stream. I have a bunch of fellows that I do a Monday stream called Niners Coast to Coast. We're all from different parts of the United States. A couple one of them is on the show that you were on that one time, East Coast Run and Goal podcast. His name is Ty Alston. We were talking, and I was like, nothing that I saw was indicative of a fluke, like something that, this happened, and the 49ers got lucky. A lot of times when you play a game, it happens. You get lucky sometimes. So I didn't sense that vibe at all. I thought the 49ers came out and really just punched them in the mouth, and I don't think they ever really recovered from it. And if you think about it, that drive that they had where they scored on, we essentially kind of we kind of gave that to them. It's a couple penalties and just I mean, other than that, I thought the Niners pretty much dog walked them the whole game. And I'm not saying it's going to be like this all season, but like you said, it is indicative, I think, of how good this team is if healthy. For the most part, if they play their best football, they're kind of hard to beat.
They certainly are hard to beat. It's an incredibly talented roster. It's an incredibly talented roster, top to bottom. There are other very talented teams in the NFC. The Cowboys are very talented. The Eagles are very talented. But I think the 49ers did somewhat establish themselves as the team to beat, because even with the Cowboys beating the Giants 40-0, I mean, the Giants looked terrible. I don't think the Giants are as terrible as they looked, but the Giants certainly looked terrible. And the 49ers went on the road and beat a team that there are pretty high expectations for this season. So they looked good. The vibe was good, but the vibe was also their goal is not to win the week 1 game. Their goal is to win the Super Bowl. So the other thing that was important was getting out to a fast start. It's something they've talked about all through training camp, not putting themselves in a hole again of being 3-4 or 3-5 and potentially missing out on that first round bye and the number 1 seed. So 1 down, and next up they have the Rams.
Do you get a vibe from the 49ers? Because I know I do. Of a team that's been through a lot, like they've been through every type of situation you can imagine. They have they're a young team, but they're not necessarily like green. They've been through some playoff runs. They've gotten their heart broken. They had the situation last year with Purdy in the NFC Championship game. I feel like this win was just par for the course. And like you said, it's not like, to them, it's not a surprise that they came out and played like that. Because that's what their expectations are. That's just a vibe that I get. I don't get a vibe of a team who like lucked themselves or kind of find themselves like, oh wow, we played well in that game. Like it wasn't a surprise to them.
Well, I mean, no, this is a Super Bowl roster that's been built as a Super Bowl roster. So, absolutely not. They expect to play like that every week. And I don't think any of them think it's luck at all. This is what they are built to do. And they only have so much more time to do it and to be able to get to the Super Bowl. So this is what they're built to do. So it's certainly not a surprise in any way. But again, their goal was not, they want to win week 1, but they have higher aspirations than that.
Speaking of winning week 1, I thought Brock Purdy played really well. Mm-hmm. Nothing out of the ordinary or nothing crazy. He is what he is. But I felt like he left off before he got injured. It was 19 of 29 to 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's a Jimmy Garoppolo stat line. Oh, whatever. A1. I thought he looked well. I thought he made some good throws. I thought the fade to Ayuk was a really good throw. I thought there was another one to Ayuk over the middle. No, I don't know if it was like a dig or some sort of crosser. It was a little bit of a deeper throw that I thought he made. I thought he is what he is. His arm is what it is. But I thought he played really well. And I thought when you look at him and you watch him and you take into consideration what happened this offseason and the decision to move on from Trey Lance, this is the guy that Kyle wants to run his offense because he runs it the way Kyle wants him to run it. And it looks effortless. It looks seamless.
I gotta be, I don't know how anybody complains about Brock Purdy. I don't understand it. He's come in and done everything they wanted him to do. And I talked about this on my podcast yesterday. People like to say, well, it's a small sample size, but you know what? If he came in and was terrible for 8 games, then people wouldn't think it was a small sample size. They'd say, that's enough. It's not that small a sample size. And we saw him go through adversity, and he runs the offense, like you said, exactly as Kyle Shanahan wants him to. And Kyle Shanahan trusts him, and he does make good throws. And I mean, this could very well be their guy. We don't quite know yet, but all signs point to him being their franchise quarterback. I do think people have a hard time with that just because he was the last pick in the draft. But at the end of the day, and Kyle Shanahan has said this many times, it really doesn't matter where you were picked. It matters what you do when you get there. And this is a guy who makes good decisions. He's accurate. He can run the offense. He's mobile when they need him to be. He's kind of everything they did want Trey Lance to be. But he's Brock Purdy, and he's done a really good job. And I can't ever understand how people complain about him or don't want to believe it. Like he looked great. He looked exactly as he did last year. He was voted a captain by his teammates. I mean, I don't know that people also think about how unusual it is for a second-year player who played 8 games to be voted a captain by teammates like Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Fred Warner. I mean, that says something. And from the other, guys in that locker room, so I don't know how anybody ever complains about Brock Purdy. And I also think with stat lines do not tell an entire story.
Nope.
I mean, you can look at a stat line. This guy could throw 3 interceptions and that ball could have been tipped from the receiver into someone's hand, but that's not how it goes in the stat line. So at the end of the day, he runs the offense well. Like I said, he's accurate. He's mobile when he needs him to be. He's confident, and he knows how to lead. And I actually asked him the other day about his celebrations because they do seem organic and he seems genuinely excited. And I said to him, do you put any thought to them? And he said, I really don't. They just happen, but it's also me showing the guys and showing the team that I'm pumped and excited. And for someone at this point in his career to even know how important that is, it's pretty incredible.
It's funny. I had a friend growing up who was a smaller guy. He's about I'm about 6'3", so he's about 5'6". But he tried out for high school football. He was a pit bull. He had no fear.
Mm-hmm.
He was a little guy. And when I watch Purdy, I see him because like Purdy has a zero fear. And sometimes the bigger guys like myself or the guys that are like, they were on a football field, they would be like, oh God, no, don't hit me, please. He reminds me of my friend growing up. Like he plays like a guy who's 6'5", even though he's only, barely 6 foot, and he's a smaller guy, smaller frame, doesn't have the hugest arm. His whole vibe comes off of as a guy, especially last year when they talked about him kind of yelling at people and trying to get people to get in line and get where they were supposed to be during practice, I would assume. And you hear Trent Williams talk about it, and they're like, they love it because it's like you said, it's organic. It doesn't come off as something that's like he thought about or he's trying to act and be a certain way. It just, to me, comes off like a leader. You watch him in press conferences, and he acts like he's been there 10 years. It's
absolutely.
And he's wearing a t-shirt and blazer. You know what I mean? He's just this cool guy with a relaxed vibe. So
I've always said that, and I have another comment, but I've always said that about press conferences, and I'm aware that games are not won in press conferences. But really, what stood out to me was after that Miami game, he came into the auditorium to the podium to talk to us, and it was like he'd been the starting quarterback for an NFL team his entire life. And there is something to be said to that because it speaks to poise and confidence. The other thing I want to say for somebody who feels like a pit bull and kind of maybe not the biggest guy, but is fearless on the other side of the ball, reminded me of Deommodore Lenoir. He has that too.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys too. One of my favorite players. I'm always big on guys that like everybody gives up on. The old underdog, the Rocky story. It's like nobody gives them a shot, but like they have the utmost confidence in themselves. You always got to root for those guys. Just because, it's always better at the end, when they make it. So, Brandon Ayuk had a great game, 8 receptions, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. All the talk in the offseason from everybody. I heard you talk about it, that this could be the year. It's everything was trending to him having the season of seasons finally, the breakout, he's going to earn that huge payday.
He did have 1,000-yard season last year, so I would hardly say that was nothing to scoff at.
Right, but it's as far as being the guy, because we talked last year as content creators on YouTube and people in the media in general, is he was the 4th option on a run first team. You know what I mean? And it feels like maybe he's become the first option, at least in the passing tree, just based on how he looked in that game. And how much of a nice chemistry they have, him and Brock, which is weird because a lot of people automatically said that Ayuk was a Lance guy and yada, yada, yada. I don't know. He looks like him and Trey Lance or Brock Purdy get along just fine.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You cut out for a second. You said they had a nice chemistry, and then I didn't hear the next thing you said.
Well, it's just the fact that a lot of people were saying that Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance were kind of that they had chemistry, and that when he left, that was kind of like a negative, but I don't see any lack of chemistry between him and Brock Purdy. I thought they have just as much as a lot of people perceived him to have with Trey Lance.
They have tremendous chemistry, and I think Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance trained together last offseason quite a bit. they're good friends. That doesn't take away anything from Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk's chemistry. And it's something we've seen. We also saw throughout training camp and throughout practice. I mean, Brandon Ayuk made every quarterback look good throughout training camp. No matter who was throwing to him and where they threw it, he was able to catch it. But they do have tremendous chemistry. And I do think Brandon Ayuk is going to have an absolutely monster season. But I just always laugh because he did have a 1,000-yard season last year. But, but that team has a lot of weapons. And I think one of the things is he could be their number one passing guy. But I think Kyle Shanahan kind of said this the other day. And with this team, I think every week it might be different. I do think Brandon Ayuk's going to have a heck of a season just because wherever he's also so open. I mean, wherever they throw to him, he just creates space and the yak, all of the things. But I think what's kind of cool about this team, and it's something that I wrote on last year and that I just think it's really interesting, is this team wants to win a Super Bowl. And there could be a lot of egos, and there's not a lot of ego. Everyone is down to do what they need to do to win a Super Bowl. So I do think Brandon Ayuk is establishing himself as the guy, but I also think from week to week and matchup to matchup, that could totally change.
I feel like what you said is 100% true. All you have to do is look at that Christian McCaffrey touchdown and how guys sold out to block with zero hesitation. I mean, those are some brutal blocks. And that I feel like we as a person, a wide receiver, when you come to the 49ers, they must get together and be like, listen, if you don't block, you're not seeing the field because this is what we do in our offense.
Absolutely. It's so important. And they talk about that a lot, that it's so important that you can block as a wide receiver, as a tight end. It's a huge part of the offense. And yeah, if you can't do it, if you're not willing to do it, you are not going to last very long, because Brandon Ayuk had a great block on that drive, as did Ray McCloud. I mean, really, it was absolutely incredible, but it's that kind of team first mentality, I think, that this team has.
I want to talk a little bit of a negative. The team allowed 15 pressures on Sunday. 9 came from the right side. There was a lot of talk about McKivitz having a rough game. And is it TJ Watt, or is it indicative of what's coming? What was your opinion of that? Is it the latter or the former? Is it just a matter of TJ Watt being really, really good, or do you have some concern?
I don't have a ton of, I mean, we're talking about sample sizes. That is a small sample size, and against TJ. I mean, I think starting your first year as the for sure starter for the season, and I know it's not his first game starting, but first year as your for sure starter for the season against TJ Watt is going to be rough. TJ Watt, of course, it's their Nick Bosa. You could make the argument that they are the top 2 to 3 defensive players in the league. I put Bosa at number 1, but you could probably, there could be an argument made. Right. So I think that's a big part of it. I think, and Chris Forster talks about this a lot when he talks about like learning from games and offensive linemen having short memories. But I actually think Colton McKivitz will be better this season for what he experienced against TJ Watt in week 1, if that makes sense. So there is a little time will tell. The 49ers seemed pretty confident in him. But I do think a lot of it is TJ Watt, and it will make him a better player next week and the week after. There may be some growing pains, but I think it will make him a better player from week to week. But they are pretty confident in him. So I would say I could understand the concern. I wouldn't freak out just yet, I guess would be the best way I could say it.
I can deal with that. I kind of had the thought that, it was a week 1 against a really good player. And he just, maybe got his lunch handed to him, but maybe, like you said, maybe it's a learning experience. We'll see.
Well, I mean, we have, I think
right.
I mean, that's the thing that's kind of hard too. I'm not saying, I don't know that Colton McKivitz is going to end up an all-pro right tackle. He might, he totally might. I don't know that he is or he isn't, but I think with the TJ Watt factor, does change things a little bit. And I just think he'll get better and better and better. So I would say give it a beat. That's what I would say. Give it a beat. There were some protection issues. It's something they're going to have to figure out, but I'd say let's give Colton McKivitz a beat before definitely writing the book on what he's going to be or not be.
Definitely. I agree with that. Defensive wise, jump over to the other side of the ball. Niners had 5 sacks, 2 interceptions. Bosa was I thought they were going to give him limited snaps, and they did. I think it was like between, I don't know, 30 or 35 snaps.
It's the 35, and he said after the game that was the plan.
I feel like, because, and you get on, Twitter, people are just absolutely ridiculous sometimes, saying, "Oh, see, that's why you don't pay a defensive end." I'm just like, "Oh my God, please stop." I just thought, it's going to take a little time. He didn't have a training camp, and he didn't have any type of mostly off-season stuff to do other than what he does on his own. But what was how did you view Bosa? How did he look to you being there watching the game?
Well, I think with Bosa, it's kind of like what I said at the beginning. It was a respectable stat line, but just his presence on the field makes a huge difference. You have Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, and Nick Bosa. Everyone on that line is going to have a fair amount of sacks this season because you have those three guys doing what they do, and it's going to help, everybody else. I thought he looked great. He was all over the place. And this again kind of goes back to stats don't tell the whole story. So he was all over the place. He was impactful in the game. Just him being there is impactful in the game. But I thought he looked great. And there are very, very few people. I'm not sure there's anybody else who could have come in and gotten there on Thursday and played 35 snaps as well as he did on Sunday. That was their plan. The 3 and outs made it so he was in the game longer. Those 35 snaps were drawn out longer throughout the game. But, I thought that he looked great. And to your point, he didn't have a training camp and all of that. And also keep in mind, they had the game in hand really from the get-go. So there was certainly no reason to push it, but that was their plan. They stuck to the plan, but I thought it looked great. You look like Nick Bosa.
And the best thing to come out of it is that Drake Jackson had 3 sacks.
Yes, he did. He did. And somebody who's worked really hard this offseason definitely put in the work. And it really showed. It really showed on Sunday. But the thing is, Drake Jackson, who played fantastic, gets 3 sacks because Nick Bosa's on the field. And that's what's amazing about this defensive line. They are so good, and they're going to be so helpful for everybody's stat line. Everyone's stat lines are going to look great, but everyone's going to play great because of what they have, in that front 7. But Drake Jackson's a guy I'm really excited about and really happy for because he did put in so much work this offseason. And, it's easy for someone in his position and where he was drafted to say, well, whatever, I'll be fine. And that's not what he did. And he came back early and he worked hard, and it's showing up on the field for sure.
I just like the fact that I was proven hopefully wrong because I was the guy banging the table during the offseason, free agency, post-free agency for guys like Yannick Ngakoue or Justin Houston or this guy or that guy to have another guy, an experienced guy across from Bosa. I wasn't super confident that you have all these kind of young rotational pieces around Bosa on the other side. But so far it looks like I was completely wrong, which I'm totally okay with. And it's nice because then I hate to sound like this, but it's a cheaper option. You don't have to spend the money. You can keep and pocket that money because you have other needs and obligations that you have coming down the road. So I thought Bosa, just his presence, like you said, helped a lot. I mean, 5 sacks, that was great. That was about as good of a defense on the road that I've seen them play in a long time. Especially that I didn't see it coming. I thought it was going to be kind of an offensive game just based on personnel wise on both sides, but boy, were we wrong. I want to get your a question or your answer about it was a weird thing that happened right before the season, for the first game. The Niners cleared $41.5 million in cap space. What is your kind of thought on that? Is it a mid-season move? Are they looking to do something with guys like Hufanga and Brandon Ayuk? What's your take on the 41.5 that out of nowhere one day I'm watching on Twitter and all of a sudden the Niners have the most cap space in the NFL? I don't get it.
I think it speaks to, and this is just my opinion, fully just my opinion. This is not like an insight. This is just my opinion. I think it speaks to kind of like the same thing of them getting Javon Hargrave this offseason. They want to win now. So should the trade deadline come along, and this is true of teams, especially teams like the 49ers who are in contention, should the trade deadline come along and there's an injury they obviously didn't predict because you can't predict that, or there's a glaring need they didn't realize they had, though after Sunday it's hard to tell, but it still is just one game, but there's something they need, they'll be able to get it. And maybe it is to try to get long-term things done with someone else. I don't know, but my feeling is that this team wants to be prepared for any and all scenarios because they are really looking to win a Super Bowl. And I know everybody is, but I think we can say, and they've been really open about it. They were open about last year and they're open about this year. That is the goal here. And it's 1 week at a time. But I think what they've done is they've put themselves in a position to do whatever they need to do. That's just my opinion.
That's exactly kind of what I thought. I thought maybe they put themselves, because they did, think about the 2019, they go out and they get
Emmanuel Sanders.
They didn't have a lot of their receiving squad at the time wasn't producing all that greatly. And then he came in and he changed the whole vibe for the young guy like Deebo Samuel. Yes, and then, of course, last year we get Christian McCaffrey, which I did not see coming.
I don't think anyone saw that coming.
That was probably one of the best. If the Niners win the Super Bowl this year, that's probably one of the best mid-season trades I've ever seen. Because not only did he come here and produce, he came here and became like a mainstay. Like he's been here for years. Amazing. He's an amazing player. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, in my opinion, they don't go to the NFC Championship game last year if they don't get Christian McCaffrey. I'm not even sure there's a lot of things that don't happen last year if they don't get Christian McCaffrey. So I think I definitely agree with you. It is a great midseason trade. Yeah, no matter what happens this year, I still think so.
It still is really, really good. I agree. And one other thing I wanted to ask you about before I ask you, just a little quick sneak peek to the Rams. I saw something. I forgot where I saw it, on what channel or what show. They were talking about the best line that Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner are the best linebacker duo in the NFL. And it's funny that this franchise had, Fred Warner and Navarro Bowman not too long ago.
Oh, Patrick Wilson. Yeah.
And now they have, Warner and Greenlaw. I mean, those two together are wow. I'm speechless because they played so well on Sunday. They're everywhere. They are worth every penny that they are given, especially Fred Warner. Do you agree that, kind of beyond a shadow of a doubt, those two are kind of the top of the top when it comes to off the ball linebackers?
I think they're top in the league. I'm not a big, they're better than the duo of Bowman or Willis. I'm just not big on those kind of comparisons because I think it was a different game. I mean, even though it wasn't that long ago, it was still a different game. It was a different team. Everything was different. So I'm not big on that kind of comparison. I do think Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are the best linebacker duo in the NFL. And it's a rarity that you're a team that can let Azeez Al-Shaair go because you have two such great guys there. So I think they're tremendous. They are among the top linebacker duos they've certainly ever had. And I think the best in the league for sure. I just don't go to that comparison because I just think the game changes so much. And that duo was together in a different time. In 2014, I think, is the last time they were together. And that's already 9 years ago. So you're just talking about a completely different NFL. So I kind of not big on that kind of comparison, but
fair enough.
They're a fabulous duo. And I mean, they're the best in the league. I would say that for sure.
I don't necessarily want to compare them, like saying who's better, but I've just thought I think it's unique that within a 9 or 10 year span, once again, you could say about two linebackers on the 49ers that they might be the two best in the league at their respective positions. That doesn't happen. It's, the 49ers had Montana and Steve Young back to back. That doesn't happen. Usually it's one great quarterback an era and then that's it. So the Niners have been real lucky just through time of having great players in multiple generations at the same position. You can say that about Rice and T.O. or whatever, but then the last thing real quickly, sneak peek to the Rams. What's your feeling on the Rams? Are they real? Are they not real? Do you think the Niners go in there and boat race them? What's your Tuesday thought on Sunday's game?
Well, the Rams surprised me. They certainly surprised me by beating the Seahawks and beating them so handily in Seattle. I'm not sold that this Cooper Cupless Rams team and generally this Rams team is going to, be lights out every week. But, I think I don't even think I don't think that the 49ers are going to lose this game. I think the 49ers are the best team. I mean, in my opinion, and of course, we have a long way to go. The first game that should be of real concern, quote unquote, would be the Cowboys game. I kind of think the 49ers roster, it's just too good. And it's assuming everybody stays healthy and all of that. And of course, any given Sunday, and they have to play the game and all of the things. But when you look at this 49ers roster, top to bottom, to me, it's just too good. And I'm not so sold on the Rams. Now it's a division rival. There's
Always,
the McVay Shanahan thing. There's like all the things that go into this, but I am not sold that the Rams are the team they were on Sunday. So I don't foresee the 49ers having a problem there, especially because yes, it's a road game, but it's a road game an hour away.
Yeah, it's a road game that your own home fans don't show up to. Which
exactly. I mean, it really is.
Really
there's
sad.
more red in that stadium than anything it's like being at a Levi's Stadium game. So
they won a Super Bowl a couple years ago, and their fan base literally doesn't care. They don't care. You go there, and
they don't really have a fan base yet in LA. They were in LA, and then they were in St. Louis, and now they're back, and they're still building. And it's LA is interesting because LA is really, it's Dodgers and Lakers, and really it's really Dodgers first, and then Lakers, and it's hard to compete with those. I mean, when the Rams were in the Super Bowl a few years ago, when Goff was quarterback, if you went into the LA Times sports section, there were more Dodgers articles than Rams articles the week of the Super Bowl. Then that says a lot.
That's sad, but understandable. Before you get out of here, if you want to just shout out again where people can find you.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Tracy FGSN and on Instagram at Tracy Sandler. Our website, fgsn.com, and our Fangirl Instagram at Fangirl Sports Network. That was a lot of things I just gave you guys. But if you just follow me on Instagram at Tracy Sandler or on Twitter at Tracy FGSN, it'll take you everywhere you need to go. Definitely.
And if you like listen to Matt Mayoka, every so often I hear her on there, 95.7 The Game. I hear you on there. So if you guys like those things too, Tracy will show up on there from time to time. Thank you so much for coming through. I know you have to get going.
Thank you for having me.
This was awesome. Anytime I could talk to somebody who's actually close to the 49ers, I always find because I live on the East Coast. So it's always to me, this is as close as I'm going to get to being near or at a 49er game until I actually go. So thank you so much for coming through. Everybody, thank you for coming through and supporting the stream. I will see you guys probably later at about 10 p.m. Eastern with me and Raj. But until next time, everybody stay safe and healthy and go Niners. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. Thank you. Thank you for coming through. I appreciate it. Absolutely.